Hey everybody, it's me, Angela Walters. Welcome to my weekly live chat. I'm so excited you're joining me. I hope wherever you are that you are staying cool because it's very hot here in Missouri and that your quilting time is just going great. I'm excited to spend a little bit of time with you today, talk about quilting. I have a giveaway. I'm going to share with you some of my favorite fillers and then give you some tips on how to work through the challenge panel on the video series that's coming up. It's going to be a kind of a shorter chat, but it'll be a lot of fun. And then if you are watching live, Jessica's here as always. Lorena said hi, Jessica. Jessica says hi back. She's here monitoring the chat. She's going to be writing down your questions if you want to answer or want me to answer one for you. If you want to win, if you're watching live and you want to win the free motion fillers panel, I'll talk about why we're doing this here in a second, but leave a comment here, tell Jessica hi, and I'll have her pick a winner at the end. Again, this is just if you're watching live. All right, first up, let's talk about upcoming live chats. There will be no live chat next week because I'll be out of town on vacation. And then the next week's live chat will actually be on July 2nd. So it'll be on Tuesday instead of Thursday because of the 4th of July. The reasoning is I'm leaving again after that for a couple weeks. So the next live chat after that won't be until I just forgot the 29th or something like that. Anyway, I already put them on the YouTube, so you can go ahead and find them and set a reminder so you can get those. So looking forward to that. All right, first of all, the two things I really want to go over, the favorite fillers and then tips for the challenge. I was demoing at one of our events last week, and somebody asked the best question. Actually, it's Dr. Melanie Rodriguez asked me, what are my favorite fillers for large areas, favorite for medium-sized areas, and favorite for smaller areas? And I just thought that was an amazing question because normally I kind of think of my filler designs or any filler designs by shape, right? Here's the round ones and the square ones. But it does make a lot more sense to group them by where they work best. So I thought, I'm going to just go ahead and show you. I'll answer that question for all of you. It was a fun little demo to get to work through those. So all of the fillers I'm talking about are actually from the Free Motion Fillers Challenge, Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along. So you can find out how to quilt all of these. That's why we're giving away the panel that you see right there. And it was really kind of fun to work through them and think which ones would be my favorite because they're kind of like my children. The one I'm with is my favorite. Does anybody else feel that way? So I was like, ooh, so I couldn't limit it to one. I had to pick two for each just because it's so hard to narrow down. So I thought it'd be fun just to share kind of what I picked and why I would pick that. So my favorite filler for large areas or an all over design or a bigger area where you have room to spread out is definitely the elongated swirl. I love this shape because it's so quick to quilt once you get the hang of it. If you're struggling through the design like swirls, it can be frustrating, but let me promise you, once it clicks and you get to that place where it's a lot of fun to quilt, it just flows so fast. And the elongated swirl doesn't have any traveling with it, so it's just nice and quick and very echo heavy. What makes that great is I just quilt that first line and just echo, 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 and just kind of get into that groove and fill in that area. This particular design adds movement to the background area, so it's easy to quilt in a row if I want to make it kind of a more, custom looking thing, or if I want it to be more of an all over, I'll go in all different directions. So a lot of versatility. I probably quilt this design more than any other design because it's a swirl and it's nice and fun to quilt. And there's so many variations that you can create with it. So here, this is kind of like we're quilting a pebble inside the swirl and making it pop, but same basic idea. So definitely one of my favorites. I use this in so many ways on so many different quilts. And then the second one, so I'm like, oh, that one was kind of hard because I knew swirls definitely number one. I went with the wood grain. The reason why I like this for larger areas is if you have a quilt that you just want a consistent texture over the whole thing, or you have an area where you want some interest, but you don't want anything fussy, you don't want anything to like detract, this would be the design. Elizabeth Hartman uses this a lot on her quilts, those little cute little animal patterns, and I want to be the kind of person that would piece an Elizabeth Hartman quilt, but I know I'll never get around to that. But she puts a wood grain on a lot of it, and it's perfect. It just gives that nice all over texture without detracting away from the little piecing. So in bigger areas or an all over design, it can look like water kind of, it can look like a lot of different things. Really fun again and fast to quilt. Just like the other swirled, you can do some variations with it like I've shown here. So Definitely one of my favorites. The reason it works better in larger areas is it does require a little bit of room to develop. You know, you've got your wavy lines and your knots, and so you can use both of those designs in smaller areas, but definitely the wood grain is tricky to quilt on a smaller scale. I'm not saying it can't be done, right? It can definitely be done, but for the most part, that's what that is. Then medium areas. This one was a little tricky because for me, like, oh, what is a medium size area? I kind of thought of it like the area in between blocks or the space in between the edge of the quilt and a block. Maybe not in between quilting designs or not as an all over, but definitely within that area. So it needs to be kind of like a specialized design, and this one is one of my favorites. So the merged lines design, again, is just a lot of echoing, which is nice and mindless once you get the hang of it. And it works better in, I don't know, like 6 to 12 inch spaces. So again, in those medium areas, giving you that nice texture without anything too fussy, just where you want some interest, but nothing too much. You know, just a zhuzh, just a little bit. And so here's just a close-up picture of a Yellowstone panel I quilted, and I did that in the sky. So you might look at the design and think, doesn't really read as sky, but it, like I said, nice texture. It can look like wind, it can look like a lot of interesting things, and it can fit irregular areas. It just needs 2 defined edges. So here we can see I put it in like that kind of chevron area, but really can fit a lot of areas. There is traveling, so it takes a little bit longer to come together, but really pretty cool once it does. I showed this quilt in a previous live chat. It was a quilt by Tula Pink. Perfect example of medium-sized, you know, areas to fill in. I got a little closer up picture here, where I want something interesting, but nothing too fussy, and you can kind of see in those blocks that shape. So probably really good medium-sized area. And just like the other designs, if it's versatile, if I can change it up and quilt it in some different ways, that makes it a little bit easier to use in a lot of different areas on our quilts. And here I've just combined that merged lines design with some different other fillers to give it just a different look. So medium areas, that's one of them for sure. The second one, I only have a couple pictures I grabbed. This one was hard. I was like, oh, what else? But the wavy line design that we see right here is actually really good for all areas, small, medium, or large, but I fit it in the medium because it does work best if you have, you know, space for it to develop. Just like the merged lines design, it goes from edge to edge and fills in that area. Again, a wavy line, nice, adds some nice movement, but nothing too crazy. It's so quick to quilt once you get the hang of it. One of the drawbacks, though, I would say to doing this on a long arm is I've got to quilt it horizontally, so wherever I put it, it's going to go horizontal, but just really nice texture. And so I just grabbed another picture of it going a different direction. What's really cool about all these designs is how you quilt it will, or your own style will kind of develop as you use the design. So you might have more little touches, you might have less. It's just kind of a fun way to see how your design comes out. All right, then small areas. So usually fillers in small areas, I'm thinking around other designs. It's, you know, in areas that I want just to smash it down. I don't know if that's a technical design term, but we'll go with it. Nothing, I don't want any movement. I just want it to be static. Just want it to kind of push down so whatever I put around or put it around shows up. So pebbles, definitely. And plus, I only like quilting pebbles in small areas. I get very bored quilting them over the whole quilt. So regardless, this would be a small area. But that little circle can fit into a lot of places. And whether that's a little area inside a quilting design or around your blocks or around something that you want to show off. I like to joke, like, we don't put pebbles around something we don't want to show off. It's like putting eyeliner around my zits, right? We want to use it in the areas we want people to notice and pay attention to. But here you can see that nice static kind of flattened down in those leaves. Again, I get very bored quilting pebbles, so just little areas, little pops. And here you can see another example of fitting them in those little spaces. Since there isn't a lot of room in those spaces, I need a design that doesn't need a lot of space to develop. I could fit swirls in there or other shapes, but it gets really hard quilting those tiny. So a very simple shape that's repeated over and over again is always going to be a great option, especially the pebbles. Another example of using it around something else. So a filler really could be an all-over design, or it could fill in an area. But one of my favorite ways to use pebbles is in, just a little bit and then transition to something easier. And we saw this a little bit in some previous live chats, but with this motif, I quilted pebbles around the outside of it just within an inch or so, and then switched to those elongated swirls because I know they're much faster and quicker to quilt, and I won't get as bored working through the area. So even if I'm filling in a larger area, I don't have to do it in the whole area. I can pick and choose. And this quilt, perfect example. If I do want to use pebbles over a bigger area, I know I'm going to need to combine it with a different design. Again, there's those swirls. I love me some swirls. So combining it will still give me a pebble here and there without doing the whole thing over the whole area. If I had quilted pebbles in that whole area, it wouldn't look much different than it does now, except that way was a lot quicker and easier to quilt. Sometimes I can be quilting lazy, if that's a particular word. All right, and then my second and last favorite filler, of course, you asked me next week, I'll probably have different favorites, but these are my favorites right now, would be back and forth lines. Again, for those small areas where I don't want a lot of movement, I need a simple shaped design that will fill that area in, back and forth lines are it. In this example, I've quilted them in kind of columns, but you could, quilt them all in a chunk right here, and you can just see around that feather, in that little area between the blocks and the quilted design, it just kind of smashes that area down and really makes what I'm putting around it shine. So again, some of my favorite fillers. If you want to see how to quilt any of those, you can check out the Fillers Free Motion Challenge. That video series, I did so many designs, I really kind of bit off more than I could chew with that. And I probably could have treated each week as its own challenge, but there is a lot of content, a lot of designs in that free video series, so you can check out and see how to quilt all those fillers there. Speaking of Free Motion Challenge quilting alongs, if you have watched my live chats before, you know we're getting ready to embark on another video series. We do this about twice a year, where we quilt along together and learn a technique, and of course this one is going to be Help How Do I Quilt It? Where we're going to see how to quilt through some different blocks. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But I wanted to take just a few moments, because it starts July 9th. I want to talk about tips for how you might work along or work through that panel, and how you can quilt along with me if you're doing it live. All my Free Motion Challenge videos are free. They stay on my YouTube indefinitely. So if you don't have time to quilt along with me right now, that's fine. I know we're busy. You can always come back later. But if you are quilting along with me week to week, this video series is going to stretch out over 5 weeks. So what does that look like for actually quilting? If you're quilting along with me on the panel that I designed for the challenge, just looking at the panel, you're going to see there's blocks in a lot of different areas, and we're going to jump around by block, not necessarily quilting it how we normally would, from one area to the next. So looking at what we're going to be talking about, the first week is chevrons. So you can already see right here, we're going to be working from the four corners. I try to design a panel that is interesting and looks beautiful all on its own. Like even if you weren't going to free motion quilt it, especially, you could still want to have it. But that also means that we get some interesting layouts. I could have done just rows of blocks, but I don't know, I just want to make it a little different. So you can already see right off the bat, if you're quilting with me on a long arm, it's going to be interesting. We'll talk about that here in a second, but I'll just kind of show you how we're going to work our way through it. The second week, we're going to do snowball blocks. And so you can see in the red where we'll be working. The next week, actually the next 2 weeks, will be log cabin blocks, where we'll learn so many different designs for that area. I broke it up into 2 videos, and so we'll quilt there and then there. And the last video will be in the center. So a lot of moving around. So a couple things about that. As you're quilting along with me, when you quilt the blocks, if you want to go ahead, you can fill in all the areas around the blocks. So if you're doing the chevrons, you can see there's like little fake blocks around it. Go ahead and fill in those areas with a swirl, a filler design. We're not going to talk about that specifically, just the blocks themselves. So you can fill that in as you work through. But if you are quilting along on a long arm, it's a little tricky, right? The way we approach a quilt on a long arm is totally different because we're working kind of in a row. If you're going to quilt along with me live, if you want to load that quilt on your machine, you might want to go through and stabilize all the seams so that you can work your way back and forth. But if I'm being honest with you, if I were just participating in this challenge as a long armor, I would personally wait until the end and do it all at once so that I don't have to either leave it on my frame for 5 weeks or take it off and put it on. Now, that's just my laziness showing right there. You can kind of decide what works for you. If you're quilting along with me on a sewing machine, you have a little bit more freedom in how you can move around that quilt sandwich, right? You can just easily reposition. So you'll want to make sure your quilt sandwich is stabilized and ready to go. And then you can just kind of fill in those areas while you're there. So that's the main kind of point I wanted to talk about. Again, I structure the videos so that the videos go together. It doesn't always, relate to the quilt itself. And then the question was asked, what do we need to quilt along? Like, what are the, supplies? Whether or not you bought the panel, you just need something to quilt on. So if you're not quilting along with me on the panel, if you have a UFO, if you have a piece of fabric you can mark blocks out on, perfect. And then you can just try the designs, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know till you do it. But I do in the videos show a straight edge ruler and a curved ruler. So I use Slim and Smiley. They're not required, and if I use it, it's just like to show you, oh, this is with the ruler, and you can do it without. So please don't feel like, oh, you have to have it. But those are two of the things that kind of show up in the videos. But besides that, some thread, some snips, watch the video, have your wine, or whatever you whatever you drink or enjoy while you're quilting, and we'll be good to go. One last thing about the panels, there are two different sizes. So, you might have the bigger size versus a smaller size, but we're still going to work through those blocks the same way. So that does not change anything about how we work through it. I'm really excited about launching this on July 9th when the first video comes out. It's always so much fun, especially since we do these live chats regularly, to get to know you all and oh, you're getting ready to go, that's fun. And it's always great to get the first couple out and like, okay, good. Everybody likes it. Everything's going great. It always makes me feel really nice. So again, that first video tutorial does not come out till July 9th, but since we are sending out the panels, products are going out, people are excited to get ready and get started for that. That's all I got for that. So basically, if you're quilting along with the challenge, we're going to be starting July 9th. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't participated before, I show how to quilt all the designs, either on a sewing machine, and I show some on a long arm. So I kind of like bounce back and forth. And then I always have free quilting diagrams for each of the videos. So you can download those as they come out to help you be successful with the designs. One gal took my class and she showed me her notebook that had all the printouts in it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. All right. Since I use glide thread, do I use an anti-backlash spring in the bobbin? Do I have any problems with it slipping off the bobbin? So for those of you that use a long arm, you might have inside your long arm a little disc, or you might have an add-on. It's called an anti-backlash spring. My machine actually doesn't have one on it because it was built before they were just came with it. What it does is as the bobbin gets lighter, it just kind of pushes it up so you have consistent tension no matter if the bobbin is full or empty. So I don't use one, but if you have one, I wouldn't take it out because it does help. Machine just didn't come with one, and I just haven't bought one. Not that I'm a handy quilter dealer, so I can go right in another room and grab it. I just haven't, so I don't know what that says about me. I don't have any problems with it slipping off the bobbin, but you do need to make sure that if you're winding glide on the bobbin, that maybe you slow down your bobbin winder a bit because you don't want it getting loose. You want it to be nice and tightly wound around there. So good question. Well, again, I know it's kind of a quicker live chat than normal. I won't be here again next week, but the week after, I'll see you on July 2nd, where we'll talk about quilting and really get ready for the challenge. If you're not watching this live and you have questions, just leave them in the comments because I get on here from time to time to answer them. And our winner for watching live for the panel is Nadine Thomas. So Nadine, oh, that's upside down. Nadine has a free panel. So Nadine, just email us, go to our website, email us your address, and we'll get that sent out to you. Well, everybody, thanks for hanging out with me again on another Thursday. I hope you all stay safe and have a great time quilting. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.